Good evening, everybody. I'm SQL Dan, and tonight we're going to take a look at a question that was posted in the forums on the Snowflake website. To take a look at the question and take a look at how I would go about solving it, and hopefully show you some cool SQL along the way. So I hope you'll join me as we go into this. The question that we're looking at, again, was posted in the forums. It was posted in the SQL section, and it was from this user here, 169, etc., etc. He doesn't provide any sample data, and he's actually not super clear about the requirements. So I've made a couple of assumptions, and hopefully those assumptions are correct. And I created some sample data. So let me jump over here, and I'll show you. He described that he has two tables. One of them is a currency table, and it has only a couple of columns in it, but there's a from country column and a to country, or maybe to currency column would be a better way to look at it. And so I populated it with 6 records here. So you see the first one says from euro to British pound, and then the next one says from euro to Swiss franc, and then we have from British pound to Swiss franc, and then we have from Mexican peso to US dollar, and then we have the reverse of that, from US dollar to Mexican peso, and then lastly we have from US dollar to the Guarani from Paraguay. So that's our sample data that I created in the currency table. Now the second table that's provided for in the question is a transaction table. And this table looks very similar to the other one we just looked at, except that it has an additional Boolean field at the end of it. And the point of this question is that we need to populate this Boolean field over here. And the logic that needs to be used is to say, if we look at the from and the to in the transaction table, does that combination exist in the currency table? And if it does exist, then we're going to mark the Boolean field as true. And if that combination does not exist, then we're going to mark the Boolean field as false. So a fairly straightforward set of requirements from the best I can tell. Now he actually has an additional wrinkle that I'll get to in a minute, but let's stick with that piece of it right now and allow me to build it. Now, first of all, it's nice to know that Snowflake actually has a Boolean data type for its tables, because not all databases do. And when you don't, then you have people having to use ones and zeros or character fields for their Boolean fields. So the fact that Snowflake has one is really nice. What a lot of people don't know about it is that you can actually populate it with something other than the words true or false. You can essentially use any expression that evaluates as a Boolean, and Snowflake will evaluate it and then insert the true or false. So let me show you what I mean. Just briefly here, let's take every record in that table, okay, and let's update them all to true. So country status equals true. All right, and so that's the way that you would think that you're going to deal with a Boolean right there, is you're just going to pass in the true or false value. Now, when we go query that table, we indeed see that the values that we put in were all accepted. But as I mentioned, you don't have to actually pass in a true or false. You can pass in any old Boolean value that evaluates, or any old expression, I should say, that evaluates as a Boolean value. So say, for example, I could pass in 1 equals 1, and, well, those would all be true still. So why don't we pass 1 equals 0 instead, because that's a false value, and then we'll see what happens. Now, this looks a little strange. When we look at it, we see the set equals, and then we see 1 equals 0, and at first glance, that would appear to be wrong. We could put parentheses around it if we want to, just to make it more readable, but it's not required. So we'll go ahead and leave it like this. And actually, let's just update one of the records here. So we'll say where transaction ID equals 3. Okay, so we'll update this, and if everything goes right, record number 3 will now be false. I don't think it took it. There we go. So one record was updated. Okay, and as we look at it, we can see here that indeed record ID 3 has now been set to false. So this is super awesome to know this, because what it means is that we can just pass in an expression to be evaluated and have all that work done. And a lot of the answers that are appearing in the forum are actually using case statements and not exists and stuff like that, and deriving logic and then still inserting a true or false. But we don't have to go that far. We can just, like I said, just pass the expression itself in. So say, for example, we want to, well, before we do the update, let's just kind of write a query, okay, of the data that's in there. And I believe, actually, I have that right here. So let's use that. Okay, and let's populate the logic that we would use for an update statement before we actually start doing the update. So again, here's the table, and I think actually I want to set all the records to null again before we get started, just so that there's no confusion and everything starts out nice and clean. Okay, so now all of the records are null, just to show you that. And now we can begin working on what we would do about that. And so we can write logic that essentially says, is the value from the from and the value from the to, do they exist in the value in the from and the value in the to from the currency table? And just a quick reminder one more time, they look very similar here and have a lot of the same things, okay? So as we're doing that, we say, let's see, which one was I on here? This one. Okay, so we say, if the value in the from country field and the value in the to country field are in, and now we can write a subquery, okay, are in essentially the exact same query, so I can copy these, okay, and then copy the other table name here. Sometimes when you're working in this interface, you end up with two cursors, and it's you always have to be alert for that, because you can really mess up your query when you've got a big long query that you're working on. Anyway, so what this says, and I'm not sure how many people have actually seen this notation too, where you can have two fields that have to exist side by side, because normally when we write a query like this, we're using one field and we're saying where from country in, and then we write a subquery over here, and the subquery also only has one column. But you can actually do this with multiple columns as well. However many columns that we have enclosed in our parentheses here are how many columns that have to be in the inquiry that we're doing over here. So in this case, we've got 2, and we've got 2. And what this effectively is saying is that on any given record, the from here has to match whatever the from is on that record, and the to has to match. So a partial match doesn't work. So I'm trying to think of an example here. Let's see. Before we actually go and evaluate, well, no, we'll go ahead and evaluate it, and then we'll come back here. All right? So what this is saying is, this is inside of this. And normally you're writing a statement like this as part of a where clause in the past. But again, because Snowflake allows us to put an expression in that evaluates as a Boolean, this is actually a legal statement right here. And either these two fields are going to be in a record that's over here, or they're not. So this thing right here is going to return a true or false. So let's do that. Uh-oh. Let's see here. What did I get wrong? From country. Oh, you know what it is I forgot to put the semicolon on the query before. There we go. All right. So what we have here is, let me put them in the right, let me order them also. All right. So what we have here now is an evaluation of this Boolean clause right here that's being returned in each of these rows. And let's just kind of eyeball these really quick and check and see whether the Boolean returned the correct thing or not. So the first one is saying we have to have a from country of Great British Pound and a to country of Euro. And so let's see if we see that in the currency table. Okay, and we don't. The first record has a from of Euro and a to of Great Britain, but it doesn't have it the other way around, which is why that one returned false. And similarly, if we step down through these others, we can see that the next one says Euro and Swiss franc, and we'll just do two at a time here. And the next one after that says Mexican peso to U.S. dollar. So Euro to Swiss franc, Mexican peso to U.S. dollar, and both of those return true. And we can see indeed record number 2 in the currency table is Euro to Swiss franc, and Mexican peso to U.S. dollar is record number 4. So both of those return true, and so I think the logic is working good, but there's only 2 more, so we'll just give them a quick look as well to make sure that they're okay. And this one says Paraguayan Guarani to U.S. dollar. That was false. And Guarani to Mexican peso, that was also false. So both of them start with Guarani, and then we're converting either to U.S. dollar or to Mexican peso. And we don't have any records here where the Paraguayan Guarani is in the from country right here. It only appears over here. So those 2 falses are also perfectly fine. So we can go ahead and we can use this logic we wrote in our update statement. So I'm going to copy this. There's my Control C. And I'm going to come down here to the update that I wrote earlier. I'll take this one where I had them all set to null. Okay, and I want to take off this stray comma right here. Okay, and so this should be a legal statement right here that is going to set each record in this table based on the evaluation of this Boolean that follows here. So let's see what happens. That's fantastic. It says 5 rows were updated. Let's query the table. And now let's query the table without the additional logic I put on it. Let's just see what's in the table now that we ran the update. And when we do that, we can see the falses and the trues exactly as we wanted. So it's really that simple to update a Boolean statement inside of Snowflake. And I hope already, even before we continue on with that, that you've learned a cool little trick here. We're going to go one step further, though, because even though I don't think English is his first language, and so I don't want to seem critical, so it's a little hard to understand, but what I think that this says right here is that we first do the comparison of from and to, and if that turns out to be false, then we also want to check it the other way around to see if maybe the values are in the other order. So maybe, like those ones that we looked at, like the Paraguay ones, where they weren't in the from, but it was over there on the to side, maybe that's okay. So we actually need a second check now, right, in order to meet this condition. So let's come back over here, and I'm going to go back to the select statement that I wrote here. I'm copying it. I'm going to insert some space. Oops. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to insert some space into here. Okay, and I'm going to paste it. Okay, and then the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the to and the from on one side of this query or the other. Now, it doesn't matter whether I do it here or whether I do it here. The key is that I'm now comparing the from to the to and vice versa. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and do it on this side over here. Okay, and now what we have is we have two different ones to be evaluated. I'm just going to give them quick aliases here. I'm going to call this evaluation 1, and I'm going to call this evaluation number 2. Okay, so we have two of them. And then let's go ahead and run this. Now, we're not updating the table yet. We're just looking at the results of the query, okay, just to check and see. And it makes sense that wherever we got a false on one of them, then we get a true on the other one, except for this one right here, where we're getting a true on both, and that's on this Mexican peso US dollar one, and you may remember that that's the one that I put in here, where we have it in both directions, which explains why both of these are true. But we still haven't solved the problem completely. I guess we could create two update statements and, update the ones that are false. But what we'd really like to do is to have this in a single update. And in normal Boolean evaluation, we have something called short circuit evaluation, which is if the first one turns out to be true, and we have an or condition, then there's no need to evaluate the second one because it's already true. Because in a truth table, a true and a false equals true, a false and a true equals true, and a true equal true. I probably should have written up one of those before I went on, but hopefully that makes sense to you. Basically, only one of these has to be true in order for the condition to be true. And so that would be an or condition. Now, if we had this in the where clause, okay, we could actually put an or, okay, and we could put parentheses around the two of these, okay, and we get the second one here. Like that. Nope. Like that, okay? And that would cause it to say if either one of these are true, then the entire or condition is true. Unfortunately, Snowflake does not allow us to put the or in the select list like that. We can only do this down in the where clause. So we can't do this up here. So we're not able to take advantage of that and to have the two work together. But I did come up with another workaround that would make that work. And that is to use a function called greatest. And what greatest does is it evaluates multiple fields across the table, and it returns the highest value. It's almost like a max, except this one is lateral as opposed to being vertical. So greatest is going to return the highest value. And you know what, before we run that greatest, let me do one more thing here. We're going to keep it here, but I want to have each of the individual returns as well. Okay, so we have our E1 and our E2 that you saw a minute ago, and now we have the greatest as well. Let's see, and we actually don't want those aliases there, but we do want the alias right here. We'll just call it the GT. Okay, and so let's run this. And I abandoned line 79. That's probably not where oh, it's because I'm missing a comma. Alright. This time it'll work. I'm certain. Invalid identifier from country. Oh, somehow we lost our from. Not sure where it went. It probably ended up with two cursors again and didn't notice it, and so it erased part of the query. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so this column E1 and E2, these are the two evaluations that we saw before, where, each of those two Boolean statements was being evaluated. But the key is, in order to get the OR that we want, where if we have a true in either one of these two fields, we want it to be true, well, that's where this greatest comes in instead, because true is greater than false in Snowflake. Alright, so if we take the highest value between these two, we're going to get true, and we end up with getting a true on every single record except the last one. So before we close out, we'll just take a look at the last two here in order to see that, and then I think that will wrap it up and make it really clear. So the last one where we got a false was the Paraguayan Guarani to the Mexican peso. So let's again come back up here to the currency table, take a look at that, and we only have one record in the entire table where the Paraguayan Guarani is, and it's matched with the US dollar. There is not any record where it's matched with the Mexican peso, so that was correct that that one returned false, because it's not in this table in either order. On the other hand, the record above it, where the, back in the transaction table, where the Paraguayan Guarani was being matched to the US dollar, that returned true now because, again, it's on this side over here, so it came through on evaluation number 2. So let's just look at this one more time, and then we'll do the update, and we'll call it good. And I appreciate you for sticking it out with me and watching me talk this through here. But again, there's the records and there's the logic. So what I want to do is I want to take this greatest part right here. Notice I have it highlighted. I'm going to copy it. And now I'm going to bring that down here. And instead of the update statement that I used before, actually, yeah, I'll go ahead and wipe it out. So let's get rid of that one, all right? And let's paste this one in instead. Now I have a stray comma right there that we need to do something with. And then we have our greatest, and we can't give it a field alias. So this one matches up, so that's right. So we have our greatest, and then we have those. Okay, I think that it's all matched up correctly. So we can run this update. 5 records were updated. Let's go back and look at the transaction table. And I believe this meets the condition that was expressed by this person who posted this right here. So I've actually posted that as one of the answers in here. Hopefully he'll take me up on it and take a look at it. I appreciate all of you for taking a look at this video. I have more of these to come. I'm planning on doing lots more of these and talking through some really fun SQL. So if you want a chance to really improve your SQL and to learn all kinds of new tricks, I hope you'll check back with me and watch some of the other ones that we'll be doing. That's all for now. I'm SQL Dan, and have a great evening.